Welcome to Altair 4, gentlemen. I am to transport you to the residence.
You are a robot, aren't you?
That is correct, sir. Please fasten their seatbelts.
Looks after us like a mother.
The year is 1956, and a spaceship shaped like a flying saucer touches down on a distant world where Shakespeare's Tempest has been reimagined with ray guns, robot butlers, and monsters born from the darkest corners of the human subconscious. This shouldn't work as serious science fiction. This definitely shouldn't influence every space opera that followed. But Forbidden Planet transformed a $1.9 million gamble into the template for intelligent science fiction cinema. When MGM executives decided to throw unprecedented money at a monster movie, they accidentally created something that would make Star Trek possible, predict artificial intelligence anxiety, and prove that the most terrifying aliens might be the ones living inside our own minds. Hollywood wanted their answer to the flying saucer craze sweeping 1950s drive-ins. What they got was Freudian psychology disguised as space adventure, where the real monster wasn't some rubber-suited alien, but the unleashed eye of a brilliant scientist whose subconscious desires could literally kill. Studios expected simple thrills. Audiences got a film that suggested advanced technology without equivalent psychological evolution leads to destruction. Dr. Morbius doesn't just study the extinct Krell civilization, he becomes consumed by their knowledge while failing to recognize that his own repressed jealousy has taken physical form as an invisible killing machine. The film that dared to blend classical literature with cutting-edge effects, work created modern science fiction by asking not what exists beyond our world, but what lies within ourselves. This started with MGM's desperate attempt to capture the science fiction market that was making other studios rich. By 1954, every drive-in in America was showing flying saucer movies, atomic monster films, and space invasion thrillers. But MGM, the studio of prestige pictures and classical Hollywood glamour, had missed the entire boom. Their solution? Throw more money at one science fiction film than anyone had ever spent on the entire genre. Producer Nicholas Nafak pitched Forbidden Planet as a thinking man's science fiction film, based loosely on Shakespeare's The Tempest. Instead of a sorcerer stranded on an island, they'd have a scientist isolated on an alien world. Instead of magic spirits, advanced technology. Instead of Caliban, a monster born from psychological forces rather than supernatural ones. The budget was astronomical, $1.9 million when most science fiction films cost under $200,000. MGM executives who normally greenlit musicals and melodramas suddenly found themselves funding elaborate alien landscapes, a 7-foot robot that cost more than most entire movies, and special effects that had never been attempted before. Director Fred McLeod Wilcox came from family films like Lassie Come Home, hardly the resume you'd expect for groundbreaking science fiction. But MGM wasn't hiring a genre specialist. They were hiring someone who understood character development and could handle their investment responsibly. Sometimes the wrong director for obvious reasons becomes exactly right for unexpected ones. The screenplay by Cyril Hume transformed Shakespeare's island romance into space-age psychology. Prospero became Dr. Morbius, the scholar whose isolation and accumulated knowledge had corrupted him. Miranda became Altera, the innocent daughter who'd never seen other humans. And Ariel, Shakespeare's spirit servant, became Robbie the robot, the helpful artificial being who served without question. But the masterstroke was replacing Caliban with the monster from the id, an invisible creature born from Morbius's subconscious desires, given physical form by alien technology he didn't fully understand. The film suggested that humanity's greatest enemy wasn't external invasion, but internal psychological forces amplified by power beyond our wisdom to control. By 1955, they were filming on MGM's largest sound stages with a crew that had no idea they were creating the foundation for every serious science fiction film that would follow. Sometimes studio desperation creates exactly the right kind of ambitious mistake. Finding actors willing to deliver scientific exposition while maintaining dramatic credibility in a genre known for wooden performances proved surprisingly challenging. Science fiction was B-movie territory in 1956, beneath most serious actors' consideration. MGM needed performers who could make alien concepts feel grounded while treating rubber-suited monsters and ray gun battles with complete sincerity. Walter Pidgeon got the crucial role of Dr. Morbius because he brought Shakespearean gravitas to what could have been a one-dimensional mad scientist. Pidgeon's distinguished career in dramatic roles gave weight to Morbius's exposition about extinct civilizations and alien technology. When he explains the Krell's fate with quiet intensity, in a single night, they were gone forever. His restrained delivery makes the extinction of an entire advanced species genuinely chilling. Anne Francis landed Altera by convincing MGM executives she could play innocence without appearing naive. Her challenge was portraying a woman raised in complete isolation who had never seen other humans besides her father, yet possessed natural intelligence and curiosity. Francis brought vulnerability and strength to a role that could easily have been reduced to mere romantic interest or space-age eye candy. Leslie Nielsen, as Commander Adams, represented the film's most surprising casting choice. Decades before his reinvention as comedy legend in Airplane and Naked Gun, Nielsen was a serious, dramatic actor perfect for the square-jawed space captain role. His Adams embodied moral authority and rational leadership while remaining genuinely human rather than heroic stereotype. But the film's most important casting decision involved Robbie the Robot. MGM spent over $125,000 creating a fully functional mechanical character that required sophisticated operation rather than simple costume work. The robot wasn't just a prop, but a cast member with distinct personality, capable of complex dialogue and emotional interaction with human characters. The supporting cast came from MGM's stable of reliable character actors rather than science fiction specialists. Warren Stevens, Jack Kelly, and Richard Anderson brought professional competence to roles that could have been thankless exposition delivery. They understood that selling the film's fantastic premise required complete dramatic commitment rather than winking acknowledgement of the material's strangeness. Here's the challenge MGM's effects team faced: create an alien world more convincing than anything audiences had seen. Build a robot more sophisticated than any mechanical character in film history, and visualize psychological concepts that had never been attempted in cinema. The solution required inventing entirely new techniques while working with 1950s technology. The Krell laboratory sequence was the film's technical masterpiece and biggest logistical nightmare. Art director Cedric Gibbons designed vast underground chambers suggesting infinite alien power, using forced perspective and matte paintings to create spaces larger than any soundstage could contain. The sequence where Morbius demonstrates the Krell's plastic educator device required lighting effects that could show thought processes visually, essentially making the invisible visible. Robbie the Robot represented the most complex mechanical character ever built for cinema. The 7-foot costume contained intricate moving parts, flashing lights, and sophisticated voice projection systems. Unlike previous movie robots that were obviously actors in metallic suits, Robbie featured articulated joints, rotating antennae, and fluid movement that made him seem genuinely artificial, yet alive. But the film's most innovative achievement was the monster from the id, an invisible creature that could only be detected through its footprints and the damage it caused. The effects team created this unseen antagonist through footprint mechanics, animated outline sequences, and strategic lighting that suggested massive presence without showing specific form. When the monster finally becomes partially visible through defensive force fields, the technique was so effective that similar approaches would be used decades later in films like Predator. The film's electronic music score, created by Louis and B.B. Barron, abandoned traditional orchestration entirely for custom-built circuits and tape manipulation. Their electronic tonalities weren't just background music, but integral storytelling elements that conveyed both alien wonder and psychological menace. MGM didn't know how to classify this unprecedented audio experience, crediting it as electronic tonalities rather than music. March 15th, 1956. Forbidden Planet premiered at Grauman's Chinese Theater to audiences who had no framework for understanding what they'd witnessed. Critics accustomed to simple monster movies and space invasion thrillers suddenly encountered sophisticated psychology, advanced production values, and themes that belonged in serious drama rather than genre entertainment. The New York Times called it an elaborate scientific fiction film, but questioned whether its intellectual ambitions might confuse audiences expecting simple thrills. Variety praised the technical achievements while noting that heavyweight science fiction might be too complex for general moviegoers. Critics seemed impressed, yet uncertain, recognizing quality without understanding significance. The film's Freudian elements, particularly the concept of subconscious desires taking physical form, represented psychological sophistication rarely seen in any genre. When Dr. Morbius finally confronts the truth that his own jealousy and possessiveness have created the invisible monster, the scene played with the dramatic weight of serious literature rather than B-movie revelation. Box office performance reflected this critical uncertainty. Forbidden Planet earned respectable returns without becoming the massive hit MGM hoped for. Audiences appreciated the spectacle and production values, but seemed unsure whether they were watching children's entertainment, adult drama, or something entirely new that hadn't been categorized yet. The film that had puzzled critics in 1956 was hailed as a masterpiece by the 1970s science fiction scholars. MGM's expensive gamble had created something unprecedented, a genre film with the production values, thematic complexity, and dramatic integrity of prestige cinema. When Gene Roddenberry pitched Star Trek to NBC executives, he specifically cited Forbidden Planet as proof that television audiences would accept sophisticated science fiction. The parallels are unmistakable. Disciplined crews exploring strange worlds in vessels designed for scientific discovery, encounters with advanced civilizations, and storylines that used space exploration to examine human psychology and social issues. The film's influence extends far beyond direct inspiration. Every science fiction production that treats alien encounters seriously rather than as camp entertainment owes debt to Forbidden Planet's approach. When 2001, A Space Odyssey presented technology that humanity couldn't fully comprehend, when Close Encounters suggested that alien contact might be transformative rather than threatening, when Blade Runner explored the psychological implications of artificial intelligence, they were following pathways Forbidden Planet had carved. Robbie the Robot established the template for every helpful artificial intelligence in science fiction. Unlike the menacing mechanical men of earlier films, Robbie was ethical, protective, and programmed with moral constraints against harming humans. This concept influenced everything from Star Wars droids to modern AI ethics discussions. The robot who couldn't hurt humans became the foundation for contemporary debates about artificial intelligence safety. The movie that confused critics became the foundation every subsequent science fiction film built upon. Sometimes the most influential works are the ones that seem like expensive mistakes until history reveals their true purpose. The Mirror. We still can't look away from Forbidden Planet's central warning feels more urgent in 2025 than it did in 1956. When Dr. Morbius explains how the Krell were destroyed by monsters from the ID, given physical form through their own technology, he's describing our contemporary relationship with social media algorithms, artificial intelligence, and digital platforms that amplify our worst impulses while claiming to serve our best interests. The film suggested that advanced civilizations don't fail because of external threats, but because they develop power before developing wisdom. As we create increasingly sophisticated AI systems, genetic engineering capabilities, and surveillance technologies, Forbidden Planet's question becomes more pressing. Are we ready for the power we're creating? Or are we the Krell, about to be destroyed by our own psychological limitations, amplified through technology? The monster from the id was invisible, because the most dangerous forces are the ones we can't see. Unconscious biases, systemic prejudices, and collective psychological patterns that shape behavior without conscious awareness. Modern algorithmic systems that influence elections, spread misinformation, and manipulate social behavior are essentially technological manifestations of Forbidden Planet's central concept. In an era when science fiction dominates popular culture, Forbidden Planet reminds us that the genre's greatest power lies not in spectacle, but in using imagined futures to examine present psychological and social realities. The film that accidentally created modern science fiction continues asking the questions we're still afraid to answer. What monsters are we creating? And are we wise enough to survive our own technological power? So, was Forbidden Planet too sophisticated for 1950s audiences, or exactly the warning about technological hubris that we needed but couldn't understand? What's your favorite science fiction film that predicted problems we're still trying to solve? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories about movies that were too smart for their own time but too important to forget.